I think now I've counted up 18 trips over to Asia here in 45 years. And I always seem to gravity uphill to his gompa. I always seem to somehow manage to come up there to try and see him. Anyway, that was my start, and eventually I got into Buddhist practices, and finally at Losar in 1990, 27 years ago, I took monastic vows with him. So I've been a monk now for 27 years. Well, I'm a Tibetan Buddhist. In a more general term, I'm a Mahayana Buddhist, as opposed to the Theravada Buddhists. And most of the Theravada are the ones from India, India, Sri Lanka, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, all of sort of Southeast Asia. And they are the ones, and the Mahayana, are mostly in the north, from China, Japan, Korea, and Tibet. And the main difference, it's my understanding, they had conferences several hundred years after the Buddha passed away, and they did not have his teachings written down. I think it was 200 or 300 years later. They all had conferences and got together to try and decide what the Buddha had taught. And they'd had somebody throw out a teaching, and they'd say, oh yeah, we all heard that one. Oh, that's a good one. And then somebody else would come out with one, a tantric one or something, and everybody said, oh boy, I never heard that one. Did anybody else hear it? And I said, well, we don't know whether he taught that or not. And but anyway, I think a lot of these teachings came back later, and a lot of them might have come in the Tibetan Buddhism anyway, from the previous religion that was here, the Bon or Bonpa. Because a lot of practices we do, as the old school anyway, the Nyingmapa, are closely related. There are four major sects there. The Nyingmapa are the old school, the first ones, and came primarily from Padmasambhava or Guru Rinpoche. He was the one that really introduced Buddhism to Tibet. And then at some point, well, a couple of generations after he had been to Tibet and got Buddhism introduced, the lineage of the kings who had invited him, I think it was the third generation, there was a king called Lang Dharma who went back to the Bon because the Bon hierarchy, royalty, didn't like being supplanted. So anyway, he got back into power and he attempted to destroy all the Buddhist temples, kill all the Buddhist monks and nuns, and they all had to go into hiding. The ones that survived lived by going into retreat in caves and remote mountain forest places. And so Buddhism sort of disappeared in Tibet for several hundred years. Padmasambhava came up there, I think, around in the 700s or 7th century, 700s. And around 1000 AD, the new schools came back to Tibet. The first one were the Kagyu, with Marpa and Milarepa and that gang, about 1000 AD. But when they came back to Tibet, they did discover there were already Buddhists practicing in retreat, the old school, the Nyingma. And then after that, the Sakya came into being. And finally in, I don't know exactly when, there developed the Gelugpa. And the predominant sect now is the Gelugpa, that's led by the Dalai Lama, and they form the big monasteries. Most of the new school operate out of monasteries, the Kagyu are the closest to the Nyingma, and a lot of them are in small retreats, caves and stuff. That's where I am. My root guru was Trulshik Rinpoche, who for me was an enlightened being. And the first practice he gave me, I didn't know it really what it was at the time, but I think he gave me an empowerment for, in Tibetan it's called Chen Risig, and in Indian language, Avalokiteshvara, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion, and possibly goes back into Hinduism for 6,000 years. It's one of the oldest known practices here in Asia. So anyway, but that was the practice he gave me, and he told me to develop love and compassion. And he whispered a secret mantra into my ear, along with bopping me on the head with the holy water and with a statue and all these things that I didn't know what was going on. But anyway, I did it in secret. Most of the time I wasn't sure how my family and friends back in America could understand me doing some foreign religion. So I kind of kept it in secret. And then as I kept coming back to Nepal, I gradually heard all the local people saying my secret mantra. Oh, money paid me home, oh, money paid me home, oh, money paid me home. So anyway, that was my first practice for about 14 years. And then I met back up with Trulshik Rinpoche, and he said, now maybe it's time to start your nundral, your preliminary practices, which I did. And by that time, I had been introduced to another Lama who was probably at that time the highest Lama in the world. His Holiness Dilgo Khyentse, who was head of the Nyingma, and later head of the Kagyu also, and that. But he, for me, he was the Buddha of this age. And I had some questions whether, golly, could I have two main teachers? And then one day I was in Dilgo Khyentse's Gompa, and I saw he and Trulshik Rinpoche sitting side by side at the same level. I said, oh, they're like the same. I guess it's okay. So anyway, those are my two main teachers. I did, when I first became a monk, I did 4.5, both of them, I asked them who I should study with in America, and they both said I should study with Chundituku or Chugdutuku in America, that he should be my Lama of this lifetime. And I did, and I spent did a 4.5-year teaching retreat in which he taught us things, and we'd sit with them for about 4.5 years. And then I followed that with the traditional 3-year, 3-month retreat. But anyway, and they gave me the honorary title of Lama, not because I know anything, but because I was one of the few Westerners to have done a 3-year retreat by that time.
Mm-hmm.